Hi there, thanks very much for inviting me first of all. I'm not used to doing 5 minutes, so please feel free to give me a big nudge when it's time for me to stop talking. As Peter just introduced me, my name is Suzanne and I'm chair of the Campaign Against Climate Change Trade Union Group, and hopefully some of you at least will be familiar with the report that we've produced. We produced it, good, excellent, a few years ago. This is our second edition. The first edition was just straightforwardly 1 million climate jobs now, exclamation mark. The second edition, which we produced in 2009, if I remember correctly, had the byline solving the economic and the environmental crisis, solving the economic and the environmental crisis, because we thought two things. One is that there is a clear common route to both the economic crisis and the environmental crisis. When you have an economic system that is fundamentally predicated on one purpose and one purpose only, which is the pursuit of profit above all other interests, needs, etc., you certainly are in danger of producing a massive economic crisis, which we've seen, but you're also in danger of producing an environmental crisis, because it means all other concerns absolutely become second, third, fourth, fifth and last on any kind of analysis of what and how the economy should work. And the environmental crisis that we have now and the economic crisis that we have now, I think, can be located in that area. The second thing we thought was that what happened in terms of political and economic arguments was often that the two things were seen as mutually exclusive. Jobs and sustainability was seen as mutually exclusive. So if you wanted sustainability, you couldn't have jobs, and if you wanted jobs, you couldn't have sustainability. And equally, if you wanted development more broadly, as it was called, then the idea of sustainability was just a myth that could not be employed if you wanted jobs and sustainability. I mean, it is clear as the economic crisis has developed that is an absolute myth. We are in a situation where we neither have neither have environmental sustainability, nor do we have actually any kind of prospect of real development and real opportunities for jobs in ordinary people's lives. And therefore I think we do have to fight to expose that as a myth. I want to just move on a little bit to say that it feels to me very much that the debate at the moment is very dominated with this view that the economic crisis is something that isn't really with us, isn't really upon us at this moment in time. In reality, the environmental crisis is very much with us. No doubt the right-wing press, the Mail and the Telegraph make a field day out of weather events like the ones that we've got at this moment in time, and that's more grist to the mill that the environmental crisis isn't happening. In reality it is. And last year saw some of the most concerning developments and saw some of the most damning reports come out. For example, the International Energy Agency last year said that last year carbon output in history was at its highest point, and they identified that preventing dangerous climate change is likely to be just a nice utopia unless something is done very, very urgently about the situation. Bill from the IAE says if we do not have an international agreement whose effect is put into place by 2017, then the door to holding temperature below 2 degrees warming is closed forever. But while the world has the potential of burning, we saw the Durban talks last year, and it is clear that yet another round of international talks, it is clear that the world's great powers have absolutely no intention of making an agreement that would allow that to happen, would allow us to put in place the kind of changes that are needed to hold emissions down. And what is their priority clearly is nothing to do with reaching agreements about a sustainable economy. Their priority seems to be ensuring that we all pay the price of their economic crisis through raiding our pensions, attacking our welfare system, introducing greater and greater levels of austerity for ordinary people. I think that one of the other things that is happening most concerningly at this moment in time is that there is an attempt to skew the debate, no surprise there, but skew the debate around the question of jobs. So that whole argument that it is impossible to have sustainable jobs is becoming much more sort of dominant in the discourse in response to the crisis and in response to austerity. That somehow we will have to sacrifice sustainability. such that it's happening. I mean, you know, the idea that they were actually doing anything about it in the first instance really is worthy of a huge ridicule. But they somehow position themselves as though they were desperately trying to do something about this problem, and now they can't, and they feel so terrible about it. But nevertheless, what becomes a priority is dealing with the question of austerity, dealing with the question of climate crisis, and providing jobs. And thus we see the whole terrain around the question of jobs becomes shifted, with the usual suspects leading the way, the Nigel Lawsons, etc., shifted around the idea that if we want jobs, then we're going to have to look at things like Boris Island, we're going to have to look at things like fracking, we're going to have to look at pursuing those kind of extreme energy, as it's increasingly called, those extreme energy resources. So perhaps if I can just try and conclude, how am I doing? Okay, if I can just try and conclude in this way, what were we trying to do with the Million Climate Jobs campaign? We were trying to actually position, we were, I don't know why I speak in the past tense, we are trying to position an alternative argument, lots of energy and enthusiasm about how to do that. Actually, yes, if I just talk just very quickly what I was talking about there, you know, we've got the feed-in tariffs over solar that the government have got rid of. And actually I noticed today that there's a bunch of 100 MPs, predominantly Tory MPs, are attempting to lobby government now against the subsidies that are being provided to wind power. By the way, just for reference here, the IEA, the organisation that I spoke about earlier, identified that globally there is £250.7 billion worth of subsidies for the fossil fuel industry, which those 100 MPs just don't seem to recognise is holding up the fossil fuel industry. So what were we trying to do? 1 million climate jobs. Yes, it's about jobs. Absolutely, it's about jobs. We have some of the highest levels of youth unemployment globally at this moment in time than we've ever had historically. In Spain, we're talking 50% of young people between the ages of 16 and 24 are without a job. Quite rightly, our press are talking about a lost generation. We have exactly the same thing in this country with high levels of particularly youth unemployment. But it's not just youth. Speaking as someone slightly older now, I recognise how frightening it is to see that the potential that you have to contribute to society can be written off at such a young, for me, age now, in your 50s and your 60s, with the skills that might actually be able to contribute to a positive society. So yes, it absolutely is about jobs. It absolutely is about challenging the demonisation of our young people. For example, when the young people took to the streets in August of this year, there was a terrible attack on those young people, that somehow they're part of a consumer culture that has got nothing, no insight, no awareness. Actually, those young people were attempting in difficult circumstances to vent their frustration with a society that spends its whole time demonising those people, not allowing them any hope, not allowing them any opportunities for the future, and using the opportunity of austerity to undermine any hope that they have for a decent future. So yes, it is about jobs, and it is about providing jobs which mean that young people, middle-aged people and old people can contribute positively to the society in which they live. But it is also about the climate. 1 million climate jobs is also about the climate. We have to ensure that we are not allowing the agenda around jobs to be hijacked around a neoliberal free market agenda. The agenda around jobs, we have to win that agenda back on the question of sustainable development. It is a myth, the idea that development and sustainability are mutually exclusive. Actually, it is capitalism and development that are mutually exclusive. That's why 1% of the population are trashing our planet. So it's about climate as well. We estimate that with 1 million climate jobs, that is jobs about reducing emissions, in the space of a short space of time, we could reduce emissions in this country by up to 80%. I'll leave you with two final things. 7% of the world's population produce 50% of CO2 emissions. 50% of the world's population produce 7% of CO2 emissions. We are serious about this prospect of fighting for 1 million climate jobs. There's a green leaflet going round. Join us this year for the 1 million climate jobs caravan as it tours the country, and we look for the support of Occupy and other organisations in backing that campaign.